Hi, my name is Maverick Evans, and today for the Fall Book Club, we're going to be talking about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We don't really know who the author is, so it's pretty similar to Beowulf in that respect. But I have two different translations here. I read the Signet Classics edition, translated by Burton Raffle, with a new introduction by Brenda Webster. And it was not too bad. Pretty easy to understand. The wording and the phrasing was, very straightforward. But then I also read J.R.R. Tolkien's translation, and I think it was better. I do think that reading the Signet Classics first gave me an advantage in understanding the language and stuff, so that it could be more flowery, more poetic, and closer to the Old English original version of the story. So Tolkien did a fantastic job with his translation, and I think he really helped bring out a lot of the beauty and the intricacies of the original language, and then brought it to modern English, at least to a place where you can understand it from as a modern English speaker. So, and the book cover is pretty cool. Has like the Green Knight here, what I assume is Sir Gawain, and then him in green, which maybe means something. I don't know. The book cover on here for the Signet Classic is pretty basic, not anything huge. Just kind of has, Green Knight on there. Yeah, pretty usual. So we're gonna compare the poem to the movie, which came out just a little while ago, and make some comparisons. First of all, I absolutely love the movie. It was very, very good, and it has been something on my calendar to try and watch when it first came out, but unfortunately, I guess I was really busy, and I didn't even know about the release, and it wasn't until about a year later that it had come out that I was like, oh no, I can't believe I missed out on that. So I ended up just having to watch it at home, and it wasn't a big deal, but it probably would have been amazing in theaters, because a lot of the different images and things that are depicted on screen are just so grand and beautiful, and it would have been great to see it on the big screen, and with the great surround sound that they have there at the theater. But anyway, I didn't get to see it in theaters, so I may as well not cry about spilt milk. But there were some major changes that were made. One of the main qualms that I take with the movie, and I really enjoyed the movie, and I think that just like I had done a comparison on Dune, I think that the movie did a very good job in creating the visual space in which the story takes place. It really looks like something. It looks like it represents the poem very well, and I'm pleased with it. It doesn't seem like something that doesn't fit, or an interpretation of the environment that's completely off in comparison to what I would have liked. It was very good, I think, and most people would agree that it was just an absolutely beautiful, as far as cinematography goes, it was just very beautiful. But one major change, and these seem, I wish that they were arbitrary, but I don't think that they are. It was pretty propagandistic in a lot of the different attitudes that it took toward the customs, traditions, and religious ceremonies that are usually taking place during the poem. For example, it was Sir Gawain who, well, then that's different too. In the movie, he's not a knight for the first part of the movie, whereas in the poem, he begins a knight, and so that's interesting. But Sir Gawain, who is to be Sir Gawain in the movie, is late to mass. He doesn't seem like he's very conscientious. He's not very timely and orderly, and there's some different flaws to our character just right off the bat. And now one of the whole points of the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is to point out that everyone is flawed, and despite those sometimes deep flaws, we can be redeemed, and we can aspire toward the greatest ideal, that is God, and be a hero, even though we have failed, and we can kind of make up for it that way. But the poem presents Sir Gawain as this perfect knight, He is in possession of the most valor. He is the most honorable, honest, hardworking, brave. I mean, you can name it, and he has all of the positive virtues that one might want, especially in a warrior. And so, for the most part, you read the poem kind of thinking that Sir Gawain is this perfect person. How could he get any better? Like, he's really just going to win. You almost don't like him because he's so perfect. And it really, the wording of the poem almost reaches a point of worship of Sir Gawain, which I think is problematic, especially from a Christian perspective. But the movie, he's doesn't even care really. It doesn't seem like he cares much about mass, and he just kind of skips out on it. Maybe he's late to it, and it's just not. He's not very, pious. And the piety of Sir Gawain in the poem is emphasized again and again and again, and so that was an odd thing to do to Sir Gawain, and a major difference that I didn't really particularly like. Because it seemed like they had created a definite schism between Sir Gawain and the church, right? A schism between him and Christ. It was an interesting thing, and so anyway, that's odd to me, but they made the decision. I really liked the way that they made the night look. I thought that it was very nice, the way that it was all like greenery and twigs and kind of. He looked very of nature. The Green Knight, they really took that and ran with it. When I had read the poem initially, the first time, I had envisioned the Green Knight being something around the lines of just this massive hulking man wearing green armor. And that was about it. Or maybe at the most his skin was green, but I didn't really envision all of this like moss and grass and things like that are integrated into his body and his beard and everything. So that was a very nice touch and vision that I think really took the Green Knight to a new level. So what exactly happens in this whole story? There's quite a bit of things that happen, but the gist of the entire story is this, that there is if you don't know, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is part of the Arthurian canon, so King Arthur, and there is this huge feast at Christmas time near New Year's, and at this feast, a massive hulking Green Knight shows up and challenges King Arthur to a game. And the stipulations of the game are that Arthur will be able to deliver a blow, however he sees fit, to the Green Knight. And then 1 year from that point, the Green Knight will return in kind. And so Arthur stands up because he's very brave and not willing to turn down, such an offer. And Sir Gawain convinces him that maybe this wouldn't be such a great idea for the king of the whole realm to enter into such a perilous game. Especially when you think about it, and this maybe is missing the point, but I do think that it's a pretty dumb game. Who would agree to that game? Because obviously you shouldn't make bets with people, ridiculous, ludicrous bets with people that you're convinced you can win against, because they must have a reason for presenting the bet to you. And I think that the reason almost always is the fact that they have something up their sleeve. They're convinced that they will win the bet no matter what. And so, yeah, you should avoid those at all costs. But they don't care. Doesn't seem like Sir Gawain doesn't bat an eye, and maybe it's this intense honor that seems like it's manifesting itself from a place of pride, that they would put their lives on the line for nothing but a game. And so, but anyways, Sir Gawain takes it and he delivers a blow to the Green Knight, completely severing his head from his body. It's rolling on the floor, and in the poem, the people who are at the party start kicking his head around on the floor and having fun with it. Didn't happen in the movie, I wish it would have, but it probably would have been a little too odd. Well, the whole movie is really odd, but I guess it wouldn't have been so fitting because it would have been comical. And so then the Green Knight, big surprise, gets up off the floor, no head, and the headless body walks over and picks up his head by the hair, and he says, "I'll see you in 1 year to return the blow. Meet me at the Green Temple." And so, yeah, is it a temple? Yeah, I think it is. And so yeah, that's that. And then he waits a whole year, and time flies by, and he goes and tries to meet the Green Knight at the temple. Now here's where a lot of different things changed. The biggest things that I noticed that were changed in the movie that weren't in the poem. And the first thing is that there is a robber, right? A kind of bandit. And I think that's actually what it says, something like that. They have very clever titles that kind of box in each chapter of the movie very neatly, and it's very satisfying. He goes and he gets robbed by this robber. He gets tied up and almost left for dead and killed. Interesting. I don't remember that happening in the poem. And then at some point he ends up in a person's house, and this massive castle, and he is a guest there. And I don't remember in what order it was that he ended up at some shack, and he had like this vision of this woman, which is another addition that was interesting, and that was kind of important. He ended up in a lake underwater, drowning, which is interesting, symbolic images, of falling deeping down into the unconscious, into chaos. And so, anyway, that was interesting. But he ends up at this castle as a guest, right? And this guy, the owner of the castle, he's like, "Hey, listen, we're gonna play another game." Like, whoa, surprise, another game. I wonder who you might be. And the stipulations of this new game is that whatever either of them, Sir Gawain or the head of the house, wins that day, at the end of the day, they have to give it to the other. And so, interesting. Basically, the owner of the house goes out to hunt every day, and he brings back various things. I think the first time he brought back a bunch of deer or venison. The second time he brought back a boar, I think, a massive boar. And if I remember correctly, the third time he had brought back a fox. Very interesting. And then for Sir Gawain, the first, second, and third time, he just gets a kiss. Who is he getting these kisses from? Well, he's getting them from the master of the house's wife. She is sneaking into Sir Gawain's bedchamber, I'm assuming at night, but I guess it has to be at daytime. Kind of confusing in the poem on what is happening when. Like, he's just hanging out in his bedchamber during the day. Is he laying there? I don't know. But she comes in and tries to seduce him, and basically tells him that she wants to have sex with him. And so she fails in everything except for she gets a kiss from him. Okay. And so then he has to swap that, and he gives him, the master of the house gives him the venison, and then Sir Gawain gives him a kiss on the mouth. Little weird. Little weird. I don't know that I'll be comfortable with that. And he's like, the master of the house is stoked. He's like, "Oh my gosh, where'd you get that? That's a great gift." And Sir Gawain's like, "Oh no, that wasn't part of the game, not part of the deal. I don't have to tell you. I just have to give it to you." And he's like, "Oh, ha, ha, ha. That's right. You don't have to tell me anything." And so, anyway, that's a very strange thing. But on the third time, the woman succeeds in kind of seducing him more, and she tries to give him a ring, very priceless, valuable ring with a big gem on it. He turns that down, but then she offers him something that he cannot refuse, which is this green belt or sash that will prevent the wearer from being able to be killed. And so it's kind of an immortality protection belt that has been, enchanted and imbued with magic somehow. And so if he wears it, then he won't die. And he's like, "Well, that's pretty handy because I'm going to the Green Temple. And if I'm going to the Green Temple, he's going to lop my head off like I did him a year ago. And so maybe I should wear this belt and it'll save my life." That's fair enough. Really good idea. But what's he going to do? Because anything that he gets in a day, he's agreed to this other game. He's got to give it over to the master of the house. So he doesn't. He instead kind of just gives him a kiss or makes out with him or something like that, and then keeps the green belt to himself. He doesn't say anything about it. He conceals it. And so, yeah, in the movie, the third, I don't know if it's the third, but maybe they do it all at once. But the seduction scene, oh my gosh, freaking weird, man. I mean, it was really, really odd. A lot of people did not like that scene, and I understand kind of why. Mostly because it's very kind of shocking material that you're not used to whatsoever. But he basically, and I don't even know how to say this without being terribly crude, because the content was very, I mean, pretty explicit. And I'm sure, okay, so in the movie, whenever she seduces Sir Gawain, I'm pretty sure they have sex. And if they don't, at the very least, he somehow ejaculates his semen onto the belt and part of her hand, and so yeah, that's what happens in the movie. And a lot of people, when they watched it, complained about it because that was very shocking and weird. And you would think that, people who are wanting to take their kids to, like, a movie that portrays some classic literature that it should be, required reading, that they wouldn't see such explicit things. Really weird. So that happened. Another interesting thing about this, before we move on, is kind of backtracking a little bit, but I just remembered it, is that there's an old crone, that old ugly crone woman who is following the lady of the house around. The lady of the house is magnificently beautiful, totally gorgeous, but the crone, she is very ugly, very scary. And so it's kind of this contrast between the two. It's like the beautiful woman's shadow just walking and following her through, which is pretty interesting. The movie also introduced, I think the first major thing would have been also like the introduction of giants. And now these are giants, these are huge. They're like 30 stories tall, like they're or even more. Like they're massive. They're huge. If they were standing in the Grand Canyon, their shoulders would be peeking out. I mean, they're massive. And nothing really happens a lot with them. They kind of look at Sir Gawain whenever he's like making his journey to the Green Chapel. They don't really do anything. Doesn't seem like. They kind of like act like they're going to kill him for a second, but then he's kind of saved by the fox, which is another element. The fox, in this case, is actually not killed. It's a companion of his that follows him along a little earlier in the story. So you can see that there are some major differences between the movie and the book, and they weren't just arbitrary differences. I wouldn't say that they were arbitrary. They seem very purposeful, very intentional, mostly because they seem like they were some kind of very, deep, thoughtful metaphors and symbols for something. And if you want to watch a symbolic interpretation of the meaning of Sir Gawain or the Green Knight, the movie The Green Knight, then I'll include a cool video link below, because he does a very good job. And so, yeah, that's kind of weird. He finally gets his journey over with. He arrives at the Green Chapel, and he is going to talk to the Green Knight. Green Knight's like, "Hey, glad you made it. You came. It's been a whole year, long time no see." And then he's like, "Well, let's get on with it. I'm gonna lop your head off. I'm gonna return the blow." And so Gawain bares his neck, the nape of his neck, so that the blow can come. But just before the blow completely falls with this massive axe that he's going to bring down on his neck, Sir Gawain flinches and tries to evade. And the Green Knight says, "What is this? Why are you so cowardly?" He's like, "Did I flinch when you cut my head off? No. So why do you do it, you coward?" And Sir Gawain's like, "Yeah, you're right. I jumped. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. I'll do better next time. Here, just try again." And he does. And this time, it only gives him a nick on the neck, and he, realizes that was the whole test, that it was to give up his life and everything. And so that's kind of the poem. And then, he goes back home and he tells everyone of the shame that he had, because he realizes that the Green Knight really at the end was everyone he encountered previous to that, that they were just trying to test him, that he had lied about having the belt. The belt wasn't even, a thing. And so then ever after that, all the knights of King Arthur's, they all wore a green sash in memory of what he had done, that he had gone through this, character trial and had come out a better person. So fairly cool. The movie, much different. And I think, honestly, if I had to say, this was like a very good change. I really liked this alteration, and I'm usually very critical of classic literature being altered within movie portrayals and adaptations. But I think that this one works fine, and I wouldn't want to, rearrange the actual canon, but it worked well in the movie. So he gets to the Green Chapel, and he's got the thing on. He flinches the first time. The knight insults him for being a coward. And then on the third time, I think he flinches twice, maybe. And then he realizes that he should just escape. He escapes. So he leaves. And then he lives out his whole life. He has like a child. She's like grown into a woman. He's very old now. And in the movie, he had also forsaken a lover, and so that was kind of an intricate thing, which was kind of weird too, because they felt like they always have to introduce love interest in classical stories. It's like, well, there wasn't a love interest, we have to make one. Okay, but he marries and he replaces Arthur as king, and that's kind of the whole deal. And then eventually he faces death again, and his head falls off while he's sitting on the throne, and that's to symbolize that he really did just die, and he lost everything that he wanted, and it was just a terrible life. And then after his head falls off, he wakes up and he's there again with the Green Knight, and so he had, I guess, assumedly seen into the future what his life would be like if he were cowardly and ran away and allowed the green belt to save his life, so to speak, I guess. And so after having that vision, which, by the way, that's a crazy vision. I mean, who knows? Like, if he experienced a whole lifetime, that's insanity. But he has courage again now. He takes off the green sash, sets it aside, and he says, now I'm ready. And so the Green Knight says, very good. Now, and I don't know if he swings first and then he says this, or if he says it right after he takes the belt off. But in any case, he says, the Green Knight says, very good. Now offer up your life again. And then that's where the movie ends. He says something like that. And that's where it ends. Pretty interesting. Pretty cool. The differences were there were a lot of differences, but there weren't too many that I was like, I don't really like that. The additions, I think, were very nice. The creative freedoms that were taken were, I think, appropriate and came across very nicely. The only thing I didn't like was the impious attitude of Sir Gawain toward Christian practice. I think that's weird. And, I'm very biased because I am a practicing Christian, and I wish that it would have been represented a little better in the story. But despite that, I think it was a very, very good movie. I think it does the poem justice, and I think that if you wanted to watch the movie and understand what the poem says, you probably won't get that. You need to read the poem. It's like a day of reading. Like, it's so tiny. Look at it. Like in this one, it's like 150. Wait, not even. The afterword is it's 132 pages, 133. I mean, you could read that in a day, really. So the movie and the poem, not anywhere near the same kind of story for the most part. Way too many changes and additions in the movie. So you probably need to watch it. If you have trouble visualizing things like I sometimes do, I would suggest to maybe watch the movie first and then go and read the poem. And the Signet Classic is going to be the best bet for people who are looking for a very simple translation, straightforward, easy to understand. If you feel like you are very comfortable with poetry and very flowery prose and things like that, more difficult things to understand, then Tolkien's translation of Sir Gawain would be a brilliant read. And if you want, do like I did, read them both. Why not? But yeah, so the last thing that I'll say here is that the translations matter. So if you buy this book and you wanna read it, kind of hope you have already read it, because I kind of spoiled the entire thing. So, and pardon me for maybe not covering the story as accurately and as briefly as I may want to. I'm trying to remember it. It's been a week or two since I finished these books back to back. But the translations matter. So if you get a bad translation of a classic work, or of anything that's being translated, if it's a bad translation, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to be hard to understand. They're going to add things that shouldn't be in there. They may leave things out, and they're going to distort things in such a way that the messages are not going to be conveyed properly into your language from the original. And so that would take your pains in finding reviews of books that have been translated well, and then I think your experience will be much better. So overall, I really enjoyed Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it may not, I may not read it again for a while, but it was definitely something that I thoroughly enjoyed. Hopefully, the next kind of book that we'll do, or poem rather, that I'd like to talk about is going to be Beowulf. So that's a very good. We have the the animation that everyone hates. I personally like it. Fight me, I don't care. So yeah, well, that was fun. So if you made it to the end, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you later.